One, two, three. All right, yo, welcome to today's stream. We are going to kick this off and we're going to just make sure that everybody's here and that everything is up and ready and loaded. So if you are here, thank you guys for being here. And I appreciate it. My name is Hector Santiesteban. I have been producing, launching, and editing podcasts for much of the last decade, and my goal today is to help you to be able to stay top of mind with your audience, with your prospects. And so we are going to cover. If you can hear me. Testing one, two. Now you might be able to hear me. Wow. I hope that you were able to hear that whole thing. Um, if not, that's okay. We'll keep rolling as we can. So again, I just wanted to check in and I'll re-say it again for the recording. My name is Hector Santiesteban, and I've spent much of the last decade here on this earth trying to figure out how to start, launch, and grow not only a successful but also a profitable podcast. And I have dedicated much of the last decade to trying to figure that out. We've produced over probably close to 1,500 episodes. We've done millions of downloads. And I think what I'm most proud of, though, is that we have generated hundreds of thousands of dollars, potentially even millions of dollars in revenue for the businesses that we are doing these shows for. And I think that that's probably what is most important. And so let's just hop in and talk about why this is so valuable. And as I was thinking about the topics for today, yes, am I biased? Yes, do I hope that one day you work with us to start and launch a podcast of your own? Absolutely. And also, I've realized that whether you utilize a podcast or whether you utilize some other method, which we'll talk about today, what those are, what that other method is, it's important for you to be top of mind. It's important for you to be in front of your audience. There is hundreds of thousands of pieces of content, of posts that are constantly flying past your prospects, right? If we think about what a prospect's day looks like, they are scrolling through hundreds or thousands of posts. They are flipping through maybe dozens of videos or TikToks or Instagram reels, and they are probably listening to a piece of content, some sort of media. And so that's a lot of things that people are consuming. And also, what's great is that it gives you a lot of opportunities to be able to get in there. And I think another thing that's probably worth talking about right now is that there's really been this sort of democratization of content. I remember back in actually, I did my very first live stream back in 2015, right? About 10 years ago, maybe 2016, right around there, almost a decade ago. And I remember that it was really this opportunity to to start talking. And then what was fantastic is that like people would listen, and maybe there's someone on the other side watching this right now, but it was the first time in sort of the world of business where you didn't have to pay for distribution, you didn't have to pay for advertising, you didn't have to pay for marketing. I remember when I first started my very first business was a sales and recruiting business, and one of the ways that we would market our services is we would send out hundreds or excuse me thousands, maybe even tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe mailers throughout the country, right? And my recruiting operation was targeted towards a smaller area, and so even in the city of Los Angeles, I would still spend tens, almost, yeah, over, I think one year, the last year I was there, I spent close to $15,000 in mail right? That I had to pay in order for them to be able to get it in their mailbox. And then obviously that was, back in the day, that was 2013, 2014, before social media had really taken over. And that was what you had to do in order to get in front of people. Now, did it work? Yes. Was it worth it? Was it profitable? Yes, probably. It was one of our best advertising methods, and it was a very much a pay to play sort of situation. And so when I got into the world of content, when I got into the world of social media, and I all of a sudden said, hey, if I just post, if I just put myself out there, if I just create and content, if I just publish, people will start to notice. And this really helped me when I was starting my online business because I didn't have a large budget. I didn't have a large marketing budget. I didn't have a huge runway or resources or really anything. I needed to go out there and I needed to start making sales fast. And at the time, no one really knew who I was or what I did or any of the value that I might be able to provide. And so I just started talking. I just started talking. And what was interesting is at the beginning, and even today, this is my first live stream in a while. At the beginning, it was hard. It was clunky. It was weird. It was there was a lot of emotions, a lot of fear, a lot of who am I, a lot of those things, which are difficult, right? They're challenging, and I can't tell you how many times I would sit in front of the camera. Back from that, and we had to run it off of our phone. We didn't have these sort of, we couldn't do it off of our computer, and so I would stare at my phone for like the whole hour. I gave myself an hour to be able to record and stream and prep, and then that whole hour would go by because I would just be staring at the camera. I would just be looking at it, trying to psych myself up, right? But what was going through in my head was all of the imposter syndrome, the who am I, what am I, like all of these things to actually that prevented me from feeling comfortable even hitting the record or the live button. And so I get all that. And on the other side of that is an incredible opportunity that if you can get past that, if you can get over that what do they think of me, how do I look, how do I sound, all of that sort of stuff, if you can get past that, on the other side of it is an opportunity for people to notice you, to recognize you. And I don't say this as necessarily as a badge of honor, and that it is the only way to do it. And also, I'm very proud of the fact that I built my business. We've done, over our time, probably close to $1 million in revenue, for sure, coming up on that mark. And all of that was done without advertising, right? And it was all done through marketing, right? It was done through content marketing, and it's free, right? It just takes your time, it just takes your attention, it takes your energy, and it takes your consistency. And if you can do that, and if you can do it consistently, what we've seen is after we start working with clients, they have people coming up to them saying, hey, I see you everywhere. Like, I'm seeing you everywhere. And they are top of mind with not only their network, their contacts, but eventually, if you do this consistently enough, you eventually start to become top of mind with your entire market as well. So let's keep going, right? We've got some good stuff to cover today. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is our parking spot. And I find that a lot of people, when they are getting into this world, when they are either thinking about starting a podcast or creating a newsletter or starting to get into content, they're like, what do I say? What do I even talk about? And even if I know what to talk about, who am I to even who am I to even feel worthy about talking about that, right? Or who am I for someone to listen to me, right? There's all these things that sort of bubble up in our head. And I've realized that if we can identify our parking spot and we can figure out what our parking spot is in the ecosystem, in the market, well, all of a sudden, a lot of those questions, a lot of those concerns, all of those things start to go away. And I learned the parking spot from a concept from one of my mentors, Jeff Hoffman. And he wrote a book called Scale, and he talks about it in there. And what he talks about is that, even in a crowded parking lot, right? Even in a crowded parking lot, everybody has their own spot. It's not like you go into a parking lot and you go, oh my goodness, there's already 30 cars here, there's already 50 cars here. I mean, there might be a lot, it might be full. You might have to work hard to find the spot for you. And also, each car occupies its own spot. And because one person is in one spot, it doesn't mean that that takes away anything necessarily from someone who is in another spot. And so if we can start to see that branding, that positioning is less about being the just best, right? It's not just about being the best, but it's about being the best for that client. It's about being the right person for that client. And in the world of social media, in the world of 2025, in the world of AI, and in the world where we are constantly, bludgeoned with all of this content and marketing and offers and all these sorts of things, being able to find the person that is right for us, that we feel is right for us, is what's going to make the client feel comfortable going to somebody or paying more to work with somebody in particular. All right, I want to check in on the stream, see how it's doing. Looks like my stream metrics say that we're doing okay. If you guys are catching this in any sort of capacity and you can hear me, let me know. But looks like we're picking up. Okay, so let's keep rolling. So we've got our parking spot. Now, the way that I've helped people identify what their parking spot is through sort of a triangulation. And I know that's like a really nerdy way of saying there's this intersection of three things that if you can find this intersection, it is oftentimes completely unique to you. And there are 8 billion people in the world, and all, what's nice is that, yes, you are probably unique, right? I'm going to go out and say probably unique, especially in three areas. The first is your experience, right? Well, actually, let's talk about your enthusiasm. And I try and make these, these like 3 E's here, but enthusiasm, experience, and expertise. So when we think about enthusiasm, this is just a really fun way of saying, like, what are you excited about? What are the things that you are passionate about? This also plays into like the personality and your vibe. Some people are, very outgoing and energetic and fun and bubbly, and some people are much more stern and slower and stoic and calculated and meticulous, and some people are mixed in between. Some people are, they're the rabble rouser, right? They are sort of the contrarian. Some people are the sort of the navigator, if you will, the facilitator. They're the ones that keep things on track, keep things guided. But figure out like what it is that you like, what you get excited about, and then also I would encourage you to think about, how do you get excited about those? Do you get really nerdy about it and get really detailed and get really into, frameworks or facts or research? Do you get really into the people and the stories behind it? Like, what do you get excited about? What do you get passionate about? That's going to be the thing that is going to resonate. Because if you're passionate about it, and you're excited about it, even if someone else isn't passionate or excited about it, your passion and excitement can be sort of this this trigger, right? That can inspire that interest in them, right? So they may not be as enthusiastic about that particular thing or seeing it in that particular way, but because you bring that enthusiasm and you also bring that authenticity, it's really it goes hand in hand, and people gravitate towards that, right? They really do gravitate towards authenticity, especially in a setting like today where there are opportunities for people to spend 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, 2-3 hours even with you through your content. And so authenticity and your being true to yourself is so important. I see a lot of people being like fake, and sometimes they can be fake in the way that they think that they are. Like, a lot of times they're trying to do what they think they're supposed to do, or they're trying to act or sound or talk like they think they're supposed to act, sound, or talk. And the challenge is, and that may have worked for a long period of time, right? Prior to the social media age and prior to the internet age and like the podcasting sort of, landscape, you sort of had to fit a box, right? It was like all of the news anchors, all of the late night hosts, all of the, previous traditional legacy media characters, they all sort of fit like the similar type of box, right? They were, pretty conventional. They stayed toward the middle, right? They were like they had, and that was because they had to create this vanilla appeal to everybody. And the challenge with vanilla appeal is that, like, yeah, vanilla is cool because people will, like, they'll take it, and it's like, fine, okay, you give me a few options, and all right, I'll take vanilla. And also, most people, if they had their options, right, and they had their ideal choice, most people would not pick vanilla. Like there are some people, but even then they want the honey bean vanilla, or they want some, vanilla, although it may appeal, or it may be, acceptable in sort of the widespread, it's not right for most people. And when I say right, like, it is not the thing for the individual. And when we're talking about content today, we're talking about podcasts, we're talking about media, newsletters, however it is that you're trying to reach out, you're going to have to be willing to be different. If so nothing else, they can know how you are different than your competitors, right? And so many people I see are afraid to differentiate themselves because in the past that was looked down upon. In the past, maybe that wasn't the best thing to do. And I'm not telling you, to go out there and, get dreads, or, on your hair, or have face tattoos, or all these things that really, seem to, like people have big, strong, visceral first reactions to. And also, I would encourage you to be yourself, be more of yourself, be more of your authentic self, or the self that is authentic in that sort of situation, right? I mean, I think that we can all be authentic in sort of a professional environment, and that may look different than authentic in a, social, maybe even degenerate environment, right? So enthusiasm, first thing, which is like your personality, how, like, your character, and I don't mean by like your integrity or your values. I mean like the character that you play. One of the other things that we talk about with our clients is understanding, acknowledging, being aware of that character, and then even embodying it. Right? If you think about a lot of famous shows, sitcoms, or even like you could extend it to boy bands, or TV shows, things like that. There is different characters, and all of those different characters have unique personalities, and people gravitate and identify and relate more with one over the other. And so creating this sort of by kind of veering off of the middle, you actually stand out, and you actually align yourself more. And so that's just a huge thing to take in consideration. All right, let me hop back in here and just acknowledge the live streamers for a second. I appreciate you guys being here. If you guys don't know who I am and you somehow ended up here, my name is Hector Santisteban, and for much of the last decade, I have been helping business owners launch and start profitable podcasts. And today's topic is all about helping you stay top of mind with your audience. All right, let's hop back in. Looks like the stream is doing okay. If we have issues or you can't hear me, please let me know. All right, so the next thing that we're going to talk about here is your experience, and this is when we talk about what do we talk about here? What is our platform? Why are people listening to us? Your experience is so valuable, and I don't think that your experience can be overstated. Now, when I say experience, I mean things like in specific industries with specific clients. Like, these are the things that you actually have done. I don't mean just like, oh, you worked here for a certain amount of time, and then you did this job for a certain amount. Yes, that's a part of it, but it's like, what stories, what skills, and less so skills, but what stories, what wisdom, what insight, what do you now know based off of living through all those things, based off of going through all those things, that now you go, okay, I've lived through that, I've made those mistakes, I've had those successes, and now I'm going to do it this way because of this. Like, that is experience. It's one thing to learn something in a book. It's one thing to have get cursory knowledge on stuff, or even have facts, or even have like this intellectual knowledge. Very valid, very helpful. And also, that is not yet quite experience because you haven't been forced to do anything with it, right? I could tell you how to host a podcast. I could tell you what it's going to be like to run your first interview or to do your first episode or your first live stream. I could tell you all those things, but it's only when you actually experience them then that do you know what to do, right? Similar to driving a car. I can tell you how to drive a car, but until it doesn't actually matter until you know what to do when to do it, right? Which I think is the real root of experience, or the real value of experience, is that now you're able to make you're able to assess situations, and then based on your wisdom and your insight make the right decision moving forward. And that often comes because you've had multiple experiences, right? And so that can't be shortchanged. The next thing is expertise, and I realize that we've been belaboring for a little bit, and so we'll try and go through a little faster. But expertise is another thing to not discount, or your expertise is another thing to really highlight in your content. And again, people have different skills, and I would encourage you to really get as nerdy and as niche with your expertise as you can. And what I mean by that is, can you think about the skill, like, right, if you're like a video editor, video editing is great, but can you video edit it for certain clients or certain types of projects, or you're really good at certain types of things, for a very long time. And I don't know that it's the exact same now, but visual effects artists could like get away with being like a one trick pony, sort of, right? Like they were the person or the team or the agency to do like fire, and they nailed fire, and that was their expertise, and so they talked about it. And I have made the mistake in the past of going very wide with my expertise, and both with what I've been what I'm learning, and then also what I share. And I don't know that that was the right decision. And what I mean by that, it was like, okay, when I got into internet marketing, it was like, all right, I need to learn how to do websites, and I need to learn how to make funnels, and I need to learn how to do ads, and I need to learn how to do branding, and I need to learn how to do follow-up sequences, and I need to learn how to do social media marketing, and I need to learn how to do live. And there was like all of these things, which I know how to do them now, and I think that I made it work because it came together eventually into some sort of cohesive package. And also, looking back on it, I probably could have gotten much further, much faster, if I would have really dove deep into one of those skills instead of hopping around trying to learn, all these different ones. And so now, that's really been my focus, is getting as narrow and getting as great at, we do podcasts, right? But all the other stuff around it, staying top of mind, content, like really nailing podcasts and really knowing all the ins and outs about podcasts. And I'm grateful that that's sort of that's happened. And also, I know that I need to continue to get better within the podcasting realm. And so video is becoming a big thing. Streaming, what's that? How do we monetize? All these things that you continue to hone and develop your skills. That's what you want to be talking about. It's the combination of your enthusiasm, what you're excited about, your experience, what you've done, and your expertise, your skills that you have right now. With those three things are oftentimes unique. I mean, unless you don't have very much of any of those, right? Which I guess is perhaps the case. But if you're watching this, chances are you're pretty enthusiastic or you're excited about something. Chances are you have some sort of experience, that you've been doing something, and that you've acquired some sort of expertise or skill set, and now it's about applying it. It's about sharing it. And so those are the three. One other thing that's probably helpful to talk about in this section is the like what to do if you are just starting out, or what if you feel like, man, you don't have a ton of experience and you don't have a ton of expertise, but you have a ton of enthusiasm about a particular subject or topic or niche. What do you do then? Can you still get started? Yes, absolutely. And there's two methods to it. The first was popularized by Gary Vee and called Document, Don't Create. I think that's fantastic. That's great. If you can do that, it works for some people, and basically they build in public. They document what they're doing. Here's what I'm doing today. Here's how it's going. I don't know what's going on with it, but here's how it's happening. Here's the things that are playing out. That's great because it gives people sort of an over the shoulder look, and they're able to follow along with someone who is not at the top of the mountain. They're able to follow along and sort of be side by side as they climb this mountain. They can sort of do that with you, and that's fantastic, right? Requires a ton of humility to be able to say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just doing this. I want to share it with you because I think that the sharing of it will be cool, and we can share in this experience together. But there is a ton of humility that's required because a lot of times they're sharing failures, they're sharing doubts, they're sharing things that don't work, and that's not always easy to do on social media. So documenting is definitely one option. The second option, which I favor more, and this is just because it's different strokes for different folks, but I favor more of the journalist or the investigator role. And whenever I came into a new niche or whenever I came into a new industry, naturally I'm curious, and so this worked for me. But I just hopped in and just started talking and asking questions from all of the people who were the most successful at it. When I first started getting into like the personal development and business space, I just started interviewing people, and I got a chance to interview people like Robert Kiyosaki, and he's probably the biggest one, but there are a bunch of other great authors and thought leaders that got me into the space, right? When I got into into the different niches and industries that we were in for our podcasting company, same thing. When I started like podcasting as our services, I once again didn't come in saying like, hey, I have all the answers. It was like, hey, I'm going to go talk to as many people who are doing well, and I'm going to try and find all the answers. And what was great about it is because I was naturally curious, because that was sort of who I was trying to get the answers all on my own. It was just great that we were able to record it and then publish it. By association, there's something that happens, right, where like, they see you next to someone, who's doing well, and all of a sudden there's that association sort of thing. And if you do that enough times, hopefully you will actually get the answers, right? Hopefully you'll be paying attention, you'll be listening, you'll be taking notes, and you'll be implementing and integrating it into your life or your business. But if nothing else, at least they will see that you have been talking to all of these really smart or successful people, and they will at least associate you with their expertise, skill set, knowledge, and such, right? I would encourage you to actually, be authentic and real. And also just talking to the people, just like being in the same room. There's something that happens when someone sees you in a picture or a video or something alongside someone else. All of a sudden, their idea of who you are and the value that you can provide just changes simply by the people that you are talking to. So that's another really, I think, helpful strategy for when someone's getting started and they don't feel like, man, I don't know if I have all the answers to come in and just say, here's what to do. You can also get the answers. Ask the questions that people want to know. Okay. Now, once you figure that out, right, hopefully what we've kind of done over the first, took us 28 minutes to get there, but hopefully what we've done is we've established, why is someone going to listen to you? Why are you worth listening to? And hopefully I've sort of convinced you that you have something worth saying. The next thing, though, is, okay, where do we actually say it? Where do we actually go out and put that stuff? And so in here I have platforms. Now, I could have called it a social media channel. I could have called it, a list. There's a number of different things that I could have called it, but I thought calling it a platform was really important. First, because you can see here I've got my 3 Ps here, so I love my alliteration. And also, I think that just thinking about it as social media, or just thinking about it like a podcast, or just thinking about it, in sort of this simplified form is really damaging to a lot of people. When I was coming up, one of the first books that I read when I got into internet marketing was called Platform by Michael Hyatt. And one of the reasons I like this word. But one of the things that he talked about was that a platform, sort of these things, when we think about like influencers, or we think about, influencers these days, it seems like it's sort of a new phenomenon. And influencers have been around, forever. Before it was, social media influencers, it was pop and music influencers, and movies and television influencers. And before that, it was there was poets, and there was, it was theater, and it was like, it was all these. Forever people have been creating these platforms to share their message, to tell their stories. And back in the old days, right? When I think of like, continental times, or even Revolutionary Civil War times, for sure. Before, pre-internet, pre-electricity, pre-microphones, when people, what they would do is they would literally stand up like on a platform. They'd like stand on a box or like a stump, and then they would just yell at people, right? I mean, they would be more than yelling, but that's essentially what they were doing. Is they would just stand on this thing and start talking to people. And what would happen is that as they started to talk, they started to gather people. People started to come in. They started to attract their audience. They started to attract the people that were resonating with what they were saying. And so that is really what a platform is a platform is a place where people can start to come together, right? To hear you, to listen to you, to learn from you. And then ultimately, what's nice about this is that if you do it the right way, those people start talking to each other, engaging with each other, communicating with each other, and now you've got a community. Now you go from a platform to a community, and you go from a platform to a community, and there's so much more opportunity opens up from that, right? Because now it's not just a one-to-one sort of thing, but you have a one-to-many, and you have a many-to-many sort of effect that's going on as well. And so I think that it's really important to think about, okay, if that's our business, how are we bringing people, how are we bringing prospects to our business, right? How are we bringing them to our platform so that we can move them down the funnel, move them down the pipeline, whatever it is that we're looking to do in order to turn them into a happy client. So when it comes to platforms, I think there's a couple of things to think about, right? I wrote down owned, borrowed, and paid. And I think that this is, we're going to put paid up here just because we're not going to talk about it as much. But owned and borrowed are things that have been around, marketing and media for forever, really. The challenge is that owned media just used to be really expensive, and owned media used to be really hard to create, right? You used to have, there was a lot of gatekeepers. It was, owned media used to be the CNNs, the New York Times, the newspaper, right? That was the owned media. And in order to start a newspaper, in order to start, a CNN, these sort of things required a lot of capital, required a lot of investment, a lot of time, and there also weren't these sort of built-in distribution platforms and networks that allowed people to see it. And so what did they do? They looked to borrow, right? They looked to get featured on different segments. Or I remember growing up, getting on like a news show was like, I mean, you were like a celebrity, right? Like if you could get on a news show and you can get on the morning news and talk about, your business or something like that, that would be a really effective way to drive clients, right? To drive marketing, drive your audience. The challenge is, though, is that once you went on their show, you didn't have anything, it was theirs, right? You were essentially using their platform, using their audience to sell your stuff. And today, essentially, that is the same thing that's happening with social media. And so, let's see here. Let's put one of these here. So borrowed media, these are like social media channels, right? Social media, you've got Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, even YouTube, Spotify, right? All of these borrowed platforms, and these are great, right? I'm gonna just delete social media because we put Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. We could even put LinkedIn, Instagram, right? All those things are fantastic. And also, if one day LinkedIn or Instagram or whoever it is decided that they didn't like what you were saying, or they had an error, an administrator error, or something happened to your account or your page, or who knows, the list can go on and on. But if that happens, well, you're on their land, right? You're essentially, crop sharing on their land. And so of course you can utilize it while you have it, but if you don't actually have any owned media, then when you're essentially at the whims of you're essentially at the whims of all these platforms. And so what we suggest is kind of doing a little bit of both, right? So borrowed media is great and it's there, and what's awesome is that it's free. Own media is yours, and you can take it and you can keep it and you can do sort of not whatever you like with it, but you have much more ability to do what you like with it. And own media, these are things like podcasts. These are things like uh, an email newsletter. Um, I might venture to say that that's like it right now, right? In terms of owned media. And what's nice about podcasts is that you have an RSS feed, and so that RSS feed, is even if Apple or Spotify decided one day they don't like your show, well, you are still on an RSS feed, and so your listeners can go out there and grab it from wherever. And so that is another great thing and another reason why podcasts have kind of become this. Really, it started out with the influencer, right? This bastion of influence, but then also it's this great place for businesses to create sort of this archive of value, right? And especially over time, it's something that can compound over it. So I might put over here a blog, right? If you've got a blog, like a website blog, that would also be owned media. But all of these really start to be places that you can build over the long term, and they may not prove immediately fruitful. They may not turn into, they may not have the audience or the built-in audience that something like an Instagram or a Facebook or TikTok presents you with. And also, once you develop this, you have a much more intimate relationship with them. You have a much more close connection, and obviously a direct connection to them that um, isn't hindered by anybody. I was just thinking about like LinkedIn and some of the posts that I had posted recently. And it's just interesting to note that certain content with certain words does better than other content with other words. And so it's like you're playing a slot machine game all the time over here with borrowed media. And when you can start to develop this audience of people who are coming and looking for your stuff on a regular basis, well, now you're not subject to the whims of an Instagram ban or a TikTok whatever, because you have the platform and you own it. All right, I'm gonna check in on the stream here, see how we're doing. Hopefully, you guys can still hear me. I'm gonna create a poll and I'm gonna say, "Can you hear me?" If you guys could let me know, that would be great, because I have done entire live streams without any audio. So it happens. All right, looks like we're all good. Let's hop into our last topic here. Oh, we have two more topics. Maybe we'll save the processes one for last, or for another day. So let's talk about pillar content here. Now, okay, we've established what we're going to say. We have figured out where we're going to say it. Okay, well, how do we do it in a way that is actually sustainable, right? How do we do it in a way that actually creates traction, right? That doesn't feel like it's this like I'm just spinning my wheels, because that can also be another thing that happens a lot with content creators, is that you can put out a lot of activity and you can do a lot of things, but unless it is sort of organized, it's cohesive, it's scalable, it builds on each other, then it's going to be it's going to be very hard to continue doing it for a prolonged period of time. Creating content is, excuse me, creating content can be a grind just because of the nature of it. And so obviously, you know, VAs and obviously editors and having someone that can help and support with the actual editing and the videos and all that stuff is super valuable and super helpful. And also, if you don't have the right systems and you don't have the right sort of, let's call it architecture, then you could be putting out tons of content, which does actually get you top of mind. But if it's not done the right way, that's all that it is just awareness, and it doesn't actually turn into sales, and it doesn't actually turn into business. And so some of these other parts of it, right, and specifically some of the parts of the processes really make sure that you turn that um, into real business. So what are the types of content that are worth creating today? There's really two of them. The first is a newsletter, which might be like akin to like a blog, and the second is a podcast. Those are really the two options, right? And I put in here, where does that come from? You can either write or you can create video. Those are the two. It used to be that you can create audio. Challenge with that is there's too many video platforms and there's too many people who are doing video, and so it would just benefit your business for them to see your face, right? And for them to be able to create that connection and that relationship, even if it's one-sided, with you, with your face, with your tone, like being able to see you helps with the sales process, helps with that trust, helps with that authenticity. And so I would encourage you that if you're going to do a podcast, you should probably do it video if you're trying to do it for your business, right? If it's just a hobby or passion project, like that's not really what we're talking about. But if you're creating a podcast for your business, I would definitely recommend making sure that you include video. But some people, they don't like to do that. They don't like to record. They don't like to be on camera. They don't like any of that. That's fine. Those people are usually much better writers. Those people are usually able to put their thoughts and their ideas into some sort of cohesive something that people can read. Now you'll notice here, I've been ranting and rambling for 42 minutes. If I tried to put whatever that came out of my head into something that someone could read and not get to the end of it and be like, what the heck was that? I can't do that. So that's why I come here and I talk it out, and even I've got these things to keep me on track. And even after that, part of what we'll talk about on the last one, or the next step, is like the processing. Even after that, I'll take this, I'll go through, chop up pieces of it, find the best clips, rewrite some of the stuff, turn those into text. So what's nice about being able to verbally process and verbally articulate a lot of these things is that you can now take that with AI, and then you can mix and chop and cut and create all of these sorts of things right from that transcript. So these are the two that I would really encourage you to pursue. Knowing that when we call them pillar content, they're called that because you can break off splinters, and that's what becomes your LinkedIn posts. That's what becomes your Substack post. That's what, like, you take this large piece of content, and then you can break it down into smaller pieces and bits and pieces. Because what we've found is that, yes, people are going to listen to your show, whether or watch your show or read your newsletter, your article. And also, more people are going to catch and consume the splintered pieces of content, even if they don't consume at the depth to which they might get it from a full episode or reading the full blog. Once again, we're optimizing for top of mind, right? We're optimizing for top of mind. And so, yes, writing that one long, great piece for the blog is huge. Yes, creating that podcast for, the episode for your podcast is great. And what's going to get it seen by the most amount of people is taking it, chopping it up, repurposing it, YouTube Shorts, TikToks, right? Like, you guys know the system. You guys have seen it. It's just a matter of, frankly, it's a matter of do you have the right processes that allow it to be sustainable? And I got to tell you,
I have a full team that is devoted to this, and it's still like, man, I feel like I need to constantly improve our systems. Like we need to constantly improve our processes to make things easier. So a couple of things when it comes to making this simple. Two two concepts that I think are helpful are to either batch record or interval record. And I found that different people, it works for different strategies work for different people. Batch recording is where you take, once a month, you take half a day, a full day, whatever you need to do, and you sit down and you bang out as many episodes, as much content, as much writing, as much recording as you can in that half day or that one day. And so if you could take that half day and you could turn that into, half day, 4 hours. So if you can turn that into four episodes, right now you've got a full month's of content recorded at least. If you've got a team or something like that to do the editing, obviously then it's sort of done from there. But now you've got these batch recordings, so over the next month you don't necessarily have to keep recording again in order to have stuff to put out. So a lot of people like to do this. We've even done it where we've done like a whole day, and we try and get 8 to 10, 12 even episodes, or even over a 2 day sort of shoot, because now we've got a full core. We've got 3 months of content, and we can really focus on the editing. We can focus on the scheduling part, so we don't really have to worry about recording again, for a while. That works for some people, and also some people energetically, like, that does not work for me. It can, but I would much rather do what I call interval recording, which is I just have a standing time that I'm available to record, or that I will record, every week. And some people, they have a specific day and time where Tuesdays at, you know 12 p.m. or Tuesdays at 3 p.m. That's their recording time. And so if you're going to come on as a guest, you pick, Tuesday the 16th or the 23rd or the 30th, or like you just pick any of those, and you as a host, that on Tuesdays this is my recording day. I like that for people who are busy, people who have a lot of meetings, people who don't necessarily have the luxury to be able to take a full day to just devote to content. If you can create, these interval schedule, and you can have just a standing meeting every single week on the calendar, you will be so amazed at how much, or excuse me, you'll be amazed at how it compounds over time, right? And how much content you can create, to where you better have these next part, this next part of the system, because if you do this the right way, and you interval or you batch record the right way, you'll have a ton of content, right? And I've even made the mistake where we've recorded a ton of content, but we didn't process it in time, and so then all of that content it was stuck, right? Good problem to have, I guess. And also, we need to figure out how we work the content through and actually get the most out of it. And so the process and the publishing part is huge, right? When we talk about process, I don't just mean, yes, the editing, but also taking that and repurposing, right? The repurposing is such a huge part of the processing part, because you want to get the most squeeze out of that episode. And the way that you're going to do that is by going back to that pillar concept, and by creating splinter pieces of content that are, you don't have to rethink. It's just more of repackaging. And then publishing. And this is sort of different for each platform. It's different for different content types, but having some regularity for your publishing, once a week, once a month, once a day, whatever it is, making sure that that's there. And then that's simple. The part that I think is not paid enough attention to is this follow-up. Because I used to think that if I just put out content, great, people would come to me. And that does happen sometimes, especially if your content is great and you're consistent and all that sort of stuff. What tends to be more effective is if, when I put out a piece of content, it's usually like it's like an invitation, right? It's like this thing that goes out to somebody and says, hey, if you like this, you're probably someone that might benefit from us working together, right? Or something to that regard, where the people who engage, I know that if I I reach out to them, and I'm not going to just try and sell them right away, right? You can make this follow-up process as human and also as automated as possible, or as you'd like. It's something as simple as, if they like your post, hey, so and so, thanks so much for engaging. Please let me know if you ever need help with expertise, right? Could be something as simple as that. And it's not, once again, it's not going to happen overnight, or you're not going to, maybe that turns into something right away. But if today you post and you get 10 people, to engage, like, comment, whatever it is, and you just reach out and you follow up and you create, a DM conversation with them, out of those 10 today and then 10 tomorrow, and let's say, let's be conservative and say you average 5 for every post per week, throughout the week. So you've got 25 people that have engaged on your posts. Not a huge, like, record-breaking, door, shattering sort of number. And also, if you follow up with those 25 people this week, and then you do it again next week, and you do it again the third week, and you do it again, by the end of the month, there's 100 people that you've just brought in warm leads into your ecosystem. And I would imagine that the more defined that follow-up process is, the better. But out of those 100, some of them are going to start to turn into business. And so this follow-up process is so critical to gathering and capturing those people who are interested, that have seen you, that you were top of mind with, and then actually creating a conversation with them. And again, you don't have to be salesy. I always love going in with value first. So, hey, so-and-so, we just created this free resource. If you want it, here it is. Thought you would love it. That sort of thing. And so it can be that simple. And speaking of which, I'm running out of gas here because I'm at about just over 50 minutes. So thank you for anybody who's made it thus far, even on the replay. And if you want our entire playbook for launching a podcast, it has something like 25 steps, a bunch of different assets that you need, along with all of the steps that you need to produce each individual episode. We put it together in a nice Notion template that you can get for free. So if you want that, just leave a comment here and I'll follow up and send you that as well. If you have any questions about anything that I've talked about today, feel free to let me know. Leave those in the comments, or you can reach out and send me a message. But again, my name is Hector Santiesteban. Spent most of the last decade trying to figure out how to produce profitable podcasts, and I'm just so excited that we get a chance to interact and co-create this future together. So have a wonderful and amazing rest of your day, and see you later.